Okay. Hi, I am Donnie. I'm one of the coaches from G2G, and today I want to talk to you about something which is quite close to my heart, which is reframing adversity. So I'm not sure if you guys watched it. At the start of lockdown, there was a documentary series on Netflix called The Last Dance, which was looking into the basketball player Michael Jordan. One of the most fascinating things that he said, or that from that documentary, was when he was talking about how frustrated he was that his team, the Chicago Bulls, after they'd won their 6th NBA championships, hadn't stayed together as a team and gone for the 7th title. And I remember sitting there watching that and thinking to myself, okay, wow, Michael Jordan, widely considered one of the greatest athletes ever. If anyone could maybe take a moment and just sit back and be satisfied with what they achieved in their career, you would have to argue it could be him. Nothing left to prove, but still there was a part of him that was unsatisfied and wanted more. As an ex-athlete myself, I very much recognised that approach, that what's next. Yeah, that approach of what's next, this isn't good enough, I've achieved that, what do I want to achieve next? And you're basically constantly moving the goalposts on yourself, and you're never ever really satisfied with what you achieve. And that's a real double-edged sword, because I think it's great fuel for attainment and achievement, but it doesn't necessarily ever, I don't think it necessarily makes for a particularly happy human. And it's almost, it seems to be like it's a kind of deal you make with the devil, if you like. So for him, one championship wasn't enough. For me, it was, now I've got 1 cap for Scotland, I want 2. After I had 2, I wanted 10. After I got 10, I wanted 20. And it just goes on and on and on and on. And you're constantly moving, as I said, moving the goalposts moving the goalposts for yourself. And as I said, that doesn't necessarily lead to a very happy human being. What makes for a happy human being? That's a pretty big kind of question, but one of the tools that I've learnt to use through necessity is this reframing of adversity, which I was just talking about. I have a long list of people through my life who've told me that I'm very much a black and white thinker, and that I need to find a shade of grey. This is an entirely alien concept to me. I recognise why it would be beneficial. It's just something, as I said, that doesn't come naturally to me. To give you a little bit more of an insight into an athlete's psyche, or maybe understanding an athlete's psyche, or maybe if you're an athlete yourself, recognising it. There was a fascinating study done, which is quite often misquoted and misunderstood, which I may be about to do now, called the Goldmans Dilemma, where basically they said to these Olympic athletes, we will guarantee that you will win a gold medal at next year's Olympics, but you will die within 5 years. Will you take that deal? And there was a very, maybe not surprising, but very high percentage of those athletes that were very comfortable making that bargain. I think that's a fantastic way of thinking about that. What's next? Constantly moving of goalpost approach to achieving your goals. You might be wondering to yourself, what does all this have to do with reframing adversity? Well, to me, the tool that I had to learn, which was basically figuring out what the opposite of that what's next approach is. And for me, it was learning how to be able to stop and smell the roses. So we're going a bit heavy on the metaphors, but that's a kind of a nice way of putting it, a fairly common kind of expression that people use. And what I realized was that it was quite a healthy counterbalance to that what's next approach that I had developed through being an athlete myself. It's okay, and in actual fact can be highly beneficial to occasionally stop that constant sprint towards the ultimate goal. Reflect back on the path that you've traveled. Foster gratitude. Quite often when you do stop and look back, you quite often see that those situations of adversity, which at the time were incredibly painful, maybe it was an injury, maybe it was a defeat, to keep it in the kind of sports world, whilst incredibly painful at the time, in actual fact, taught you a lesson that you really needed to learn, that in actual fact, in the long run, has been a real gift. And when did I learn that I really needed to reframe adversity? So many of us at the moment are experiencing this unprecedented level of uncertainty. it's like an extra layer of this underlying stress that's maybe kind of bubbling over underneath the surface. And for me, it has actually manifested itself in experience like a real period of self-doubt and uncertainty, and actually in my ability to coach other people. The way it feels for me is that I doubt myself because I feel so unsettled. How can I possibly help somebody else? So coaching is my livelihood and it's one of my passions. And so this is quite an unsettling feeling for me. And whilst it has led to an uncomfortable couple of weeks, it has reminded me of this valuable lesson that I've learned over the last few years. Once again, it's realizing, it's reframing that adversity and realizing that these periods of difficulty, these periods of struggle are usually followed by periods of growth. And whilst it's not particularly enjoyable when you are struggling, if you're able to look back at previous periods when you've struggled and recognizing the pattern that this is hard at the moment, but I do know that what's happened before is this period, as I say, of struggle has led to growth. And it's almost like for me to continue to evolve, I need to just accept the facts that there will be periods of self-doubt and accept that as this is just part of the process.